I was warned about Resident Evil 0, mostly the monkeys. I was warned about the monkeys. Thank you. It wasn't enough. According to many players, 0 is either the hardest or the worst game in the mainline series. I haven't played the whole series yet, but to say that I'd rather swallow my microphone whole than ever play this game again would be an understatement. With that being said, I still enjoyed the game, but the question I really want to answer today is just how scary was Resident Evil 0? Welcome to the Series Saga, where we discuss the distinctive features, evolution, and impact of our favorite video game franchises. For Resident Evil, we are analyzing the evolution of horror throughout the series, including the atmosphere, monsters, gameplay, and lore, concluding with a score for each game at the end. In the last episode, I talked about Resident Evil 1, the remake from 2002. So if you missed that episode, be sure to check it out. With that being said, let's begin. And of course, I hope you enjoy. Resident Evil 0 was released in the same year as the Resident Evil remake, back in November of 2002. It is set 24 hours before the events at Spencer's mansion, making this game the earliest out of the entire timeline. It serves as an origin story before the mansion's events and the T-virus altogether. Our two main protagonists are Rebecca Chambers and Billy Coen. I am not going to get a chance to say this later, so I will say this now. I loved Billy's character, and I wish he would appear in a later Resident Evil game. As far as I know, he doesn't come back. His character was very well done, and intriguing all the way through. Rebecca was cool too, but Billy Boy was the man.
No thanks, Dollface.
The main villain is none other than one of the co-founders of Umbrella, James Marcus, who was assassinated by the president, Oswald Spencer himself. Years of research led Marcus to the discovery of the progenitor virus, which would then in turn lead to a stronger mutated version called the T-virus. Leeches were a huge part of his research and how he successfully created the T-virus. Due to their simple biology, regeneration, and high adaptability, the leeches took on the T-virus more effectively than any other life form. Marcus's experiments paid off in the form of the Queen Leech, which would actually play a huge role in saving his life. We'll circle back to Marcus later because I think he's one of the greatest pillars this game has to offer from a horror perspective, and you know what, simply in general, I think he's great. I'm just giving you the backstory first. For now, let's focus on the aftermath. The enemies and monsters of Resident Evil 0. Considering only a premature string of the T-virus existed, there are a considerable number of mutated animals in this game. Don't get me wrong, every game has their fair share, but this one's got a lot. Let's start with everyone's favorite, the Eliminators. Their name, Eliminator, comes from the fact that they will eliminate your will to live. From a gameplay perspective, I freaking hate these monkeys. I sounded like Frieza from Dragon Ball Z numerous times, and you know what? He had a point. These monkeys need to go. But if we take a step back and look at them from a different angle, they're actually kind of terrifying. They're one of the earliest prototypes for bioweapons by Marcus. They displayed remarkable strength and virtually unscathed intelligence. They could understand basic commands, but beyond that were unpredictable. Some were kept for further experimentation, and the rest were left to rot inside the facility. We encounter groups of them throughout the underground labs and training facility, clawing and jumping at our hero's progress. The reason why people hate them so much is because of their absurd health for the size that they are. The damage that they can do in succession is stupid, and if you find two Eliminators in the same room, they can easily stun lock you to death. However, I do think they are one of the more unique enemies in the game. Normally, animal experimentation involves other species like insects, but to see primates were involved too and how disfigured their appearance has become is quite disturbing. I mean, I love their designs. I think they're very creepy and showcase just how far the experiments really went. But let's be honest here, what's a more common animal to creep under your skin? Bugs. Now, I don't mind bugs personally. The ones I truly despise are cockroaches, and that's about it. But you can imagine how I felt when I saw the plague walkers. They're close enough to a cockroach where I had literal chills the first time I saw them. I was not a fan. They're another batch of early experimentation with the T-virus, and Marcus used multiple insect species and he spliced them together, with the virus as a bonding agent. It was just a test to see if making bioweapons was even plausible, and it was. Unfortunately, their intelligence was non-existent, so controlling them was not an option. On top of the plague crawlers, the Centurion was one such a special case in Resident Evil 0, considering the fact that there is no record of Marcus actually experimenting on centipedes. It's theorized that a random centipede fed on the remains inside the lab and grew into this giant creature. During the boss fight, it captures Rebecca, so you have to use Billy alone to rescue her. The last insect mutation I'd like to talk about is the first boss in the game, Stinger. a giant scorpion that corners the player at the end of the train car. This is one of the better bosses from a horror perspective because you are quite literally cornered, pushed up against the wall without much breathing room. If the camera angles were a bit better, this would have been a high-tier introductory boss fight. Fun fact, my grandpa got stung by a scorpion in Egypt, so this kind of feels like retribution to me. The animal mutations serve as a means to portray the depth and obsession Marcus had with creating the perfect bioweapon. And I didn't even cover them all. There's also giant frogs, bats, I freaking hated the bats, crows, and dogs. However, the Tyrant was one of their best creations. A prototype, but one that showed promise for future endeavors. It was deemed a failure due to an overdose of the T-virus. It was shown to be very powerful, but lacked the necessary intelligence to control effectively. It is one of the better boss fights in the game if you ask me, because his sheer size is intimidating. And I love playing Ring Around the Rosie. I am so far loving the Tyrant fights in this series, so I am hoping it stays that way. The Tyrant was a unique bioweapon that showed promise, but it's the leeches that are the main focus of this game. Out of all the experiments Marcus performed, the leeches were the most successful. By combining the progenitor virus and leech DNA, this is how he created the T-virus. The leeches showcased an all-around improvement when injected, but what made them real dangerous was their ability to learn and cooperate, to merge and fuse together to create an image in the likeness of their creator. Mimicry Marcus is the name given to the leeches that bound together like this. They are yet another enemy in this game that people tend to not enjoy. They are so fast you can only get in like 1 or 2 shots before they attack again. Their range is insane. They are literal tanks on higher difficulties, and when they do die, they explode, leaving leeches along the ground. You know they're a problem when the music immediately changes whenever they're in the same room. The enemy design in this game is pretty decent. I mean, I do like the focus on animal mutations, but here's the thing. I am grading this game based on its horror value, and when I look at the variety of enemies in Resident Evil 0, it's just not as good as the other games. To me, I have more of a fascination towards these creatures rather than a fear of them. And there's a difference between being scared and being creeped out, and to me, being creeped out is lesser than being scared, and for the entire game, I was at most just creeped out. Yes, I don't like the design of the play crawlers or eliminators, but I got used to them after a couple of times. Besides, some of the designs were just bigger without any variation like Stinger and Centurion. It was okay when Jan did it because I have an opinion, but seeing the same animal but bigger design again, it was kinda lame. What really holds this game back to me in the horror factor is the atmosphere. You can have the creepiest, scariest monster designs in the gaming industry, which this game doesn't have, but if you don't have a setting that matches or complements them, it waters down the whole experience. 0, I think, has good level design because you're using 2 characters to solve puzzles and to interact with your surroundings. I thought that was unique. However, the atmosphere is just not cutting it for me, and I think it's because of 2 reasons. The fixed camera angles are back, but they do not work as well as they did in the first game. In Resident Evil 1, you were inside a dark, decrepit mansion where the fixed camera played beautifully into the claustrophobic corridors and rooms. Certain camera angles felt like you were stalking your character, like from outside a window or something. It was tasteful. In RE0, it's just bad. I feel like where the cameras were positioned most of the time did not add anything to the horror design, and it may have hurt it more in some cases. The fact that you're in big, open rooms for a good portion of the game too doesn't really help, because there's no sense of suspense. There's no need to worry about what's around that corner because I can see the whole room. In RE1, that was a constant worry in the back of your head if a zombie was hiding somewhere or not. The other reason is because of how many different locations there were in 0. Now, I don't mind multiple locations, but when you have one giant setting, it adds so much personality to that one place that it becomes way more memorable. Think of the Baker family estate from Resident Evil 7. It's massive, but it's a cohesive atmosphere with lots of depth to it. Resident Evil 0 had the train, the treatment plant, the training facility, the factory, and other small areas. As more and more were introduced, they became more and more forgettable. I mean, it makes sense, the order of events, I get why we had to go through all these areas like that, and it can work, but here it does make the atmosphere overall feel disjointed, inconsistent, and it really have no personality. And to me, the lighting was kinda weak too in this game, especially when compared to the first one. It just didn't feel like the atmosphere was playing along with the horror factor or with the enemy designs. But again, that may be just me. If the enemy design and the atmosphere were the only two things, this game would score quite low. However, we're going to circle back to James Marcus, because I believe he's the best part about this game and what makes the horror content worth it. As previously mentioned, James Marcus was a co-founder of Umbrella and the one responsible for creating the T-virus entirely. His discovery, however, would soon lead to an obsession. We know Marcus used a variety of test subjects from insects, mammals, and reptiles, but eventually he would move on to human subjects. Children were a majority of his research, and he would trick them into getting infected by simply touching the leeches. Throughout the facilities, you can find bloody dorms, torture chambers where Dr. Marcus would test their biological limits, gas chambers to analyze their survivability, and when they failed, he would discard their bodies in a poor manner. Children would undergo vivisections, which is basically surgical dissection or experimentation on a living animal. It literally means to cut alive. He was a very sick man who hid away from the world to dedicate all his time to his research, and eventually he wanted to take over Umbrella. He became so obsessed with his leeches that he started referring to them as his own children. The Queen Leech was perhaps his best creation, but he was soon murdered by two of his best and favorite students, Albert Wesker and William Birkin. They were ordered by Spencer because he had an idea or a sneaking suspicion that Marcus was going to do something bad. They would take over his research and dump his body below, alongside with his Queen Leech. However, the Leech was not dead, and immediately began to assimilate with Dr. Marcus. Over the course of 10 years, the Queen Leech would absorb Marcus's brain, gaining his memories and taking revenge on the Umbrella Corporation altogether by unleashing the T-virus. When he's revealed at the end of the game, don't get it wrong, this is not Marcus. It's the Queen Leech who thinks it's Marcus because it absorbed his memories. And I have to interrupt myself here because I want you to know something. I saw this cutscene before, and I just love his stupid voice lines. They are hilarious to me.
Now I will have my revenge on Umbrella, and the world will burn in an inferno of hate.
You'll pay for what you've done.
We'll see which one of us is gonna die.
Dude, I love it, man. It's that corny, stupid voice acting that I just treasure so much. And the world will burn in an inferno of hate. That has been inside of my brain for years, and I'm so glad that I finally got to see it personally. The Queen Leech is the final boss, and overall, it's not terrible, I guess. I mean, it's Resident Evil. You're not gonna get Dark Souls level of quality here. It's basically a souped up version of the regular Marcus clones, but it's the second phase, where things start to get a bit more difficult. He transforms into a worse version of the Leechmonger from Demon Souls, and reveals its weakness to sunlight. The goal is to remove the 4 locks to activate the sunroof while the other person distracts the Queen Leech. This was much easier than I thought it was going to be because I assumed I had to be the one to unlock the sunroof. But no, your NPC partner can just do that for you. And thankfully, I just got to shoot the thing, so it all ended well. Marcus was a great villain for this game's story, considering his lore, foundation with Umbrella, and unique powers through the Queen Leech. He was the catalyst to most of what happens throughout the rest of the entire series. I thoroughly enjoyed the story that this game had to offer, but I need to answer the question here: how scary was Resident Evil 0? To me, it was below the bar in almost every category besides lore. I think James Marcus really saved this game from being a complete bore, and he's what kept me going, basically. I mean, overall, this game is just not great when compared to the others. I'm glad I have it under my belt now, and I'm proud to say, like, oh, I've completed it, but I would never play this again. When it comes to the spooky scale, or whatever I call it now, I'm gonna say Resident Evil 0 gets a grade of C-. I can still tell it's a horror game, it's just not a good one. Enemy designs were cool, lore and story were great, but they were not enough to fight against the huge negatives. And especially when you have the comparison to the other games that I'll talk about later, yeah, it does not stand a chance. Thanks for watching another episode in Resident Evil Series Saga. Next time, I'm going to be tackling Resident Evil 2, the remake, because I want to give every game the best possible chance, and the remakes are just scarier. I mean, that's just how it is. And if you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and to subscribe for more content like this. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everyone, and of course, stay safe.